Okay, I'm gonna be talking about The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a book and a movie, and also it's being made into a new show, which there were some details about it that were told to us, and I'm not too happy about it. No one is. But point is, yeah, I'm gonna be talking about that. I'm gonna put a slight, misophonia, I think that's how you pronounce it, warning, because, I don't want to bother people in my house because they're still sleeping, so I'm holding the microphone pretty close to my mouth, so you might hear me swallowing, breathing. So sorry about that. I'm just put that in there. Clearing my throat because that happens a lot. So I'll get started. I'll just give you a brief description of the book. If you don't want spoilers, leave now. It's a really good book though. You should read it. But okay, I'm gonna stop. So, how the book goes, I'm gonna do a really simple explanation. So how it goes is there's this guy called Dorian Gray, and he's really good looking, insanely, right? And his friend, and yes, quotation marks friend, that they're not friends. Come on, they're a little more than that, but it was written in 1890, and they're both guys. So Oscar Wilde obviously had to water it down a bit. But Dorian's friend, Basil, is a painter, and so Basil paints Dorian. And this painting, along with Basil's friend, Harry, kind of influences Dorian, because what Harry said to Dorian was that, the only thing in the world that's, worth anything is youth, right? And because, like I said, Dorian's really pretty, but he doesn't really have that much else going for him. Sorry. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, which you can see when he, because if he was smarter, he probably wouldn't have ended up believing this, but, so, he isn't the smartest, but he's really hot, right? So, Henry kind of puts this idea into his head: the only thing in the world is youth, it's the only thing worth anything, and once you're old, no one will care, right? And so then, when he sees the finished portrait that Basil painted, he kind of realizes his beauty, and he starts to believe Harry, right? Which in the end ended up killing him and turning him really evil. Well, actually, I don't think people can be turned evil. I think he probably had that in him to start with. But what Harry said, and as well as the picture, kind of just brought it out. But yeah, so sorry, mind blank. But yeah, so essentially he realized how pretty he was when he saw the picture, while still, having in his mind what Harry, while still having in his mind what Harry said to him. So, and he really started to believe it, which doomed him, like I said. But so it's a really good book though. It's really well written, and it has some lines and paragraphs and just a lot of just really well written monologues and that sort of thing. Actually, I want to read a little bit to you because it's quite good. Excuse me. Okay. So, I'm gonna start with this, and this is Dorian talking because Basil told Dorian that Harry was a bad influence, right? And so this is Dorian talking, and he says, "Have you really a very bad influence? What Henry, as bad as Basil says?" And then well, it's Lord Henry, but I'm pretty sure his first name is Harry. That's why I said Harry. But Lord Henry says, or Harry says, there is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral from the scientific point of view. Why? Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul. He does not think his natural thoughts, or burn with his natural passions. His virtues are not real to him. His sins, if there are such things as sins, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self-development, to realize one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. They've forgotten the highest of all duties, the duty that one owes to oneself. Of course they are charitable. They feed the hungry and clothe the beggar, but their own souls starve and they are naked. Courage has gone out of our race. Perhaps we never had it. Perhaps we never really had it. The terror of society, which is the basis of morals, the terror of God, which is the secret of religion. These are the two things that govern us, and then Basil ends up interrupting him. But it's a very good book, and I'm not quite finished it yet, but I still know the plot because I hear about it in like other books, people talking about it. But so far from what I read, God, it's really good, right? So, and like I said before, Basil and Dorian were not just friends, okay? It's pretty clear to anyone who reads this, okay? And even if they weren't together, per se, it was very clear, and it was a really big and important part of this book. The love that Basil had for Dorian was a really big and important part of this book, because it kind of showed that while like Basil was like in love with Dorian, all Dorian really cared about was himself, and which was pretty heartbreaking. But like I said, it was very important. It was essential to the story. And even if you do want to say, hey, maybe their relationship was platonic, okay, but it definitely, like, you can say that. Everyone has their opinions. But the thing that the new show did, well, it's not out yet, but people have been talking about it. And what it did is they made Basil and Dorian brothers. Which is wrong on so many levels, alright? Because it, like I said, it's clear to everyone that they were together. Well, something. There was something. Basil definitely was in love with Dorian, alright? So, making them siblings is not only weird and concerning, but it's also just destroys the plot, of the whole book. Which is really awful because it, like I said, it was a very important part. So, but even if you are going to say, hey, maybe their relationship was platonic, that's fine. That's fine. But it definitely wasn't that of brothers. Okay, even if you're going to say it was platonic on both sides, just no. But even if you are going to say that, they were definitely, if they weren't lovers, they were friends. Okay, they were not brothers, and I just hate how they made them like that how they're making them like that in this show. It's gross. And also on top of this, okay. So obviously the book was written, like I said, in 1890, so it never explicitly states that they were together. But again, it's clear. It was clear to the people in 1890, okay? And it's definitely clear now, right? And even there was a movie Right, so there was a movie that came out in 2009, I believe, with Ben Barnes, which I think I mentioned before. But so that movie came out, and okay, so this was 15 years ago. 2009 really doesn't feel like 15 years ago, but it was. And in the movie, they were like, well, Oscar Wilde obviously had to water this book down more than he would have liked because of the circumstances of the time. Sorry, excuse me. But they're like, because of this, but they're like, so he obviously had to water it down, but we don't need to do that, right? Because it's 2009, hello. 21st century. So they, actually, in the movie, they were definitely lovers, right? They kissed, like, more was implied. So, sorry. So even if you are, like I said, trying to say that in the books, hey, maybe they were just friends. Even if you are trying to say that, there is no like argument. This is like you can't argue that in that movie they were just friends. Like they weren't. Which so it is like even if you do want to say maybe they were just friends in the book, they weren't in the movie, and it's just kind of gross. It's very gross. I don't like it. And it's so stupid. I'm actually really mad, but they're literally they are literally like censoring this. They're censoring queerness in in 2024, and I'm like, what? It's scary. Um, but yeah, like they weren't censoring this 15 years ago in 2009. Oscar Wilde was only very like only like watering it down a bit in 1890 just so because he didn't want to like get killed or arrested or I don't know what the punishments were at the time. But like honestly, if Oscar Wilde can do better in 1890, why are you guys 2024 censoring queerness? Like, hello? And I was on Tumblr the other day. This is how I found it out, by the way, because I was like reading Picture of Dorian Gray, and I'm like, hey, this is a really good book. I'm gonna look it up on Tumblr because I'm sure there are some people on Tumblr who've read this, and I'm gonna like see what other people think of it and what their favorite parts are. So I was like, yeah, let's do this fun. And it was like literally, I think it was the day after, or maybe the day that the movie was announced. The show, sorry, show. The day that the show was announced. The day or the day after, I don't know. But so like a lot of people on Tumblr were talking about it, and they were all like mad, understandably mad. And it was so stupid because why? It was so dumb. I was gonna say something, but I had a point here. But you know, yeah, it's bad. I don't like this. It's really messed up. Oscar Wilde is looking down at us and just crying right now. Yeah, that's bad. It's bad.